and then of course, or record, and then I can edit it as well. But why don't you just go ahead and start by introducing yourself?
My name's James Black. I own this shop, the T-shirt Lab downtown, which you can kind of see behind me. And this is where we make T-shirts and do a lot of screen printing. Here, I'll put some stuff in the frame there.
Perfect.
So yeah, I do screen printing, but I'm also an illustrator and I do digital art. I do stuff for animation and video game like industry stuff. But my bread and butter is making T-shirts. And
T-shirts.
I also teach at the youth center and do a lot of other stuff in the community that involves art. But mostly the output is screen print based.
Awesome. So I guess I could also let people know that you and my brother know each other from high school. Is that right?
We grew up together. He saved my life a few times.
And you guys are still in contact. I know you don't see each other as much as you used to, but yeah, I think he and his family went to go visit you at your shop a couple of weeks ago, or maybe now a couple months ago. So that was nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I love seeing little Neil.
Yeah.
And yeah, every time they pop in, I always love that. And the kids like to watch the shirts drop out of the dryer, so that's how I entertain them when they come in.
Awesome. Awesome. So when you think about your childhood and the type of house you grew up in, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of artists have been exposed to something in their life that allows them to be creative and have endeavors, but also the ability to be able to do that. So was your family growing up and your household open to the idea of you experiencing art? Did they offer opportunities for you? How did you get interested in ultimately what you're doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, I had the most supportive family as in terms of like backing me and being behind doing artwork. I mean, there was never really a question. I was always encouraged to pursue art, and I just like gravitated towards making imagery, and I just kept doing it. And yeah, my family's always been 100% with it and behind me for sure.
So when you talk about gravitating towards imagery, what kind of imagery are you gravitated towards? And then what kind of content are you most interested in creating when you have like a blank piece of paper in front of you? What have you enjoyed making the most throughout your life?
Well, when we take it back to being, young, I was always into comic books and, superhero stuff. And I always loved to go to the comic book store that was in our neighborhood and really like tried to learn from a lot of those comic book artists that were so popular in the 90s. And even now I could crack open a comic book and tell you who drew it just by like their line work, because I got so invested into that type of style. And I always thought that's what I would be when I grew up. Like when people would ask that question when you're young, like what are you gonna be when you grow up? And I was just like, oh, I'm just gonna draw comic books. Like it was already done. But the older you get, you realize that there's actually a lot of different paths that art can take you in. And I went to school for art. I went to school here at UNM and also at.
Yeah, so yeah, divulge a little bit more into what happened, what your path was after high school.
Yeah, I mean, I did go to UNM for a little while and study at the fine art department there. And then I went to Manhattan to school of visual arts and studied illustration there. So I kind of got a little bit of the fine art side and a little bit of the graphic art side. And I think that really shows in what I make today, because I bridge both of those areas in terms of like my image making. And then like really I'm a gun for hire in that I sell my graphics too. It's not just all fine art.
Yeah, that's interesting that you pointed out the interest in comic books. That's kind of exactly what Larry Bob said. He said he used to go to the comic store and try to emulate some of his favorite comics, and to a very, when you think about his work, it's very like like organic forms, but also kind of like really cartoony imagery,
Yeah.
which you guys have similar looks. So you went to college, you studied art, and then what happened after you graduated, and then you ultimately came back to Albuquerque? How did you find the shop that you're working in now, the studio space, and how long have you been there?
Like, I've had friends that were like downtown always, and this block has always been like a little like hub of culture because there's a gallery upstairs and there's a barber shop next door that my friend Gabe owns. So it was kind of like a hangout block anyway. And eventually I came to know whoever was running the space here, and I was just close with everybody, including the owner of the building. So when it eventually came up for rent, I was able to snap it up, and I've just kept it for 10 years.
Awesome. Cool. So your business, you create t-shirts with your own imagery. Do you also create t-shirts with other people's imagery and then you sell them and make a living?
Yeah, both. So there's two sides to that. I mean, I do production printing for groups, for large groups like schools or organizations. And then we create our own designs and we sell those. And I have like a little boutique area over here where we have our own clothes that we
Oh,
sell.
cool. Yeah.
And then, we make a lot of stuff for the community, for the youth center, or for, different businesses that are downtown here. So it kind of just depends what walks in the door. That's one of the most interesting parts about my job, is that it's never the same. Like, I never know what graphic is going to come in this week that I'm going to have to process,
Yeah.
or what request might come in. And somebody might need something wild and I have to create it. So that's kind of like the most fun part about it, but also challenging.
Yeah, right. And I think for artists, it's interesting because you have to find a bridge between making a living and then creating art. And if you can do both at the same time, it sounds like you're able to really, if someone comes in and asks you for a design, then you're able to put your creative spin on something that goes on their shirt and they're thankful. Other people kind of have an idea of what they want, which is the best of both worlds. Really, you can challenge yourself in making a graphic or an image, and then they get what they want and you get what you want, which is pretty neat. Explain a little bit about and correct me, I mean, I might not know what I'm talking about, but what you're doing is you're screen printing, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I could do a little demo here at some point if you want. I could walk the computer over there and I could do a test print for you.
Sure.
But I mean, screen printing is a graphic process in which we use, any imagery, but mostly imagery that has really big graphic and bold line work. And we transfer the image onto these screens like you see behind me. And we just push ink through the screens, and it creates a perfect stencil in which the imagery that you want prints exactly on the shirt where you want it. So that's what this whole rig and everything over here is for, is to keep everything perfectly lined up. So it's just like, it's a graphic image process. And Andy Warhol made this famous inside of the fine art world, and that always interested me when I was younger. And they said anywhere where there have ever been presses, whether it's a Gutenberg press or any type of press, that's a space where revolutionary thought can be disseminated. So I was always into that notion that you can make multiples, you can get a lot of things out of one image. So those are like some of the reasons that I gravitated even more towards this process.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. I didn't even think about that. Did they refer the screen as the matrix? Is that what you would call it, as the matrix, or no?
Yeah, some places would call it, like, you could call it a matrix. Yeah.
Yeah, I took a couple screen printing classes in college, and I think that, well, that's what I remember as having. And with some techniques, your matrix you can keep for a very long time and print multiple. The ones behind me are all screen prints that I did for my master's.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
And it was on a piece of metal that the sun actually etched on. It was like we exposed it. It's all coming back to me. It's been almost I guess 10 years, but screen printing is fascinating. And I think what's so interesting about the word and the idea of art is that it encompasses so many different ideas and people and materials. There's no way that you can just say that I think the definition of art for me is something that evokes a response in someone, good or bad. I think a lot of people refer to it as like a controversial idea or topic, but it's interesting that some people like yourself are focused on one type of art for so long, and another artist is never going to be exposed to that material. It's pretty fascinating when we think about how big the world of art is. So
yeah, totally. I love that too. And it's funny, but we have to we get to work with a lot of different artists who may not have used this process. So we have to find ways to translate their imagery into this way of making images. So it's a learning process, and you can kind of get behind other artists' work and see how they construct their imagery, and that's very informative too. So I like that a lot.
that's great. When you think about the type of work you create and how often you're creating, where do you think your motivation comes from? You know, you hear intrinsic motivation all the time, and I think for a lot of creative people, and just for people in general, there's that part of your brain that's creative, right? I think everyone has it. How do you tap into your creative part unless it just never shuts off?
Well, I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, right now it doesn't shut off because there's a lot of input, so I have a lot of output, with so much news and so much going on that I'm trying to soak in. It actually translates to more artwork, and I think that that's good, as long as I keep making work and find a way to keep a pipeline. But it can also be a double-edged sword, you know what I mean? If you're not making work, you can get bogged down by a lot of input, you know? But unlike some artists, like would not hesitate to say that I'm motivated by the bottom line. I mean, I'm motivated to make money, and I have a business to run here. I have employees to pay. So it's really important, like that comes first, my business comes first, and that all my people that work with me and in my collective, that they eat and they're fed and well paid, and etc. And then I could work on my own imagery second, and then try to forge like style and, come up with my own ideas second. But again, like those are my main motivations, is keeping the lights on.
Yeah, those are
And,
pretty big priorities for sure. How many employees do you have working for you?
well, right now I have a couple that are furloughed because there's not as much work due to the pandemic. But I have one guy, Malcolm, who works with me full time. And then I have 3 other part-time employees, and then I have I have an intern, and sometimes my old man will come in here and help me too.
Oh, cool. Very nice. It's a family business, huh?
Absolutely. Well, when he's in here, yeah.
If you weren't an artist, and I know that's hard for a lot of people to hear sometimes, well, artists to hear, where do you think, and what kind of job would you be happy with instead if you couldn't do what you do right now?
Well, I also teach, so I'm comfortable teaching, and that's another part of being an artist too, I think, is teaching. So if I had to, I would probably teach, and that's in my blood, as my brother and my mom are teachers. But on my other job too is I'm a DJ, so I'm involved in music. So it's somewhere in that industry would maybe be a possibility. But yeah, I don't know. It is, like you said, it is hard to imagine because I've invested so much into like this career and doing what I do, and also being self-sufficient. So I can't imagine working for like a company or a corporation right now and getting laid off or
Yeah,
having
right. This is giving you the freedom to continue to work during this time, which is a lot more than a lot of people can say. So
yeah, maybe I just don't even want to imagine it, you know
yeah,
what I mean? Because I'm just trying to be
yeah.
thankful
Oh, absolutely.
for how it is. But yeah, it's hard for me to imagine what I would be doing if I wasn't in this position. But like I said, like teaching and music are already part of what I do, so I would most likely be more invested in those areas.
Cool. Tell me a little bit about what you do with the youth program you keep talking about. And I asked Evan if I should ask you any questions, and he said just to make sure he talks about the classes he has for kids. So that's kind of it. I'm interested more in that.
Well, I have a couple of things that I do in the community as such. There's a high school that's next door, Amy Beale High
Amy
School,
Beal, right?
and I have an intern every semester from the high school that comes
Cool.
with us over here. He'll probably sweep the floor, maybe help clean up screens or do something like this. But if they're passionate about the art form, if they're passionate about this type of graphic production, if they can learn a little bit of Photoshop, then I also have a program at the youth center, Warehouse 508. So I teach there twice. I was teaching there twice a week before the shutdown. And that is a screen printing program where I teach kids how to use the screen print machine. I teach them how to burn screens with the sun, like you were talking about with the solar plate that you had used. And I teach them how to do it all themselves. So it's kind of like, if there's even more interest there, then I have a pipeline back here to the shop to where they can do more work and get paid. So I have the two young guys that work for me that are part-time. They came through that program through Amy Beale, and now they're actually youth instructors, my print lab assistants at the youth center. So we just kind of have this each one teach one kind of mentality.
Yeah, right. That's great. That's ideal.
Yeah, it works out good because the youth center is literally just a few blocks away from my shop downtown here, so it's easily accessible. And they have larger space. We have less space than the large youth center, so we can go bigger and we can do different, more experimental projects there. But more importantly, it's a good starting point for younger kids to get involved, because our age demographic is from like 13 to 20.
And how does a student or someone get involved in going to that, being a part of that program?
Warehouse508.org is the website, and you can see all the programs that are up. Unfortunately, right now everything's on hold, maybe until the summer, we don't know. But I'm still sending out info to my classes and to my students, like online resources and different ways that they could do screen printing from home. And we're just, whenever things open back up, we will have classes again, hopefully. And students can go there like after school or during the summer.
Nice. Yeah, I'll have to use that as a resource that I tell my students about, because some parents contact me about having programs for their kids to be involved in. And unless I don't know, but I don't really know of many in town. So that's a good resource to know about. So
yeah, I feel like the outreach, we could have more outreach, so more parents should know. But I'll get you plugged in, and I can send you over the flyer for like this past semester or what we did last summer. And yeah, like we're always working with a bunch of diverse students there. It's some marginalized kids that don't really have anywhere else to go, but we get some really interesting work and some really sharp kids that make some cool stuff.
That's a great opportunity for those kids to have that wouldn't otherwise be exposed to something like that. So that's great, especially here in town.
Well, it works out for me in another way too, because doing this type of work a lot, you could get burned out, So in working with young people, it keeps me inspired, because when I see it click with them, or when they get a really cool idea, it refreshes my hard drive in a way.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And it clears the cache of all the muck.
Yeah.
And like get inspired. And there's many designs that I've come up with after being inspired by young people. So if we can keep that kind of positive feedback loop,
yeah,
like my intention,
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so you want to take us through what a process would be like to make something, and then do whatever is comfortable for you. And
yeah, let me see. Let me pull this over here and find a good spot. I'll just do a little one of my logo designs for the lab here. Well, let me set it up so you guys can see.
And then your shop is just south of Central. What street are you on? Are you on 4th Street?
I'm on 4th Street between Gold and Central.
Okay.
And we're doing appointment only right now, but we're doing a lot of work online with people.
Oh, okay.
And we're doing this community project where we're trying to help out small businesses and everything too.
Sweet.
So this is a screen here that I'm rolling over, and it just has my T-shirt lab logo on it. And I've just set up like a spare T-shirt right here. And this is a squeegee. And you can see it's covered with this ink, right? And when we push the screen down, I can just run ink across it like this. And I'm forcing it through this perfect stencil that I've created with the power of the sun, like you did your print. And when I pop up, there's a logo, right? So here it is, screen printed on there.
Sweet, that looks great, yeah.
And that's how, all these shirts are made in here, and all these different color squeegees are for different jobs that we're working on. And this is like my big press that has a few different jobs going right now. So what we're doing is pushing our own stuff, like I mentioned before, and donating a portion of that to our friends in the community that are out of work, restaurant workers and bartenders. Then we have another program where we're getting fresh juices sent to the front lines for healthcare workers.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
So
yeah, I saw the article in the on the news the other day, and then we all went back and forth. Did you see James on the news? And so it's neat that you're able to give back. When you think about a community, and I've never thought about it until now, but since I work at Cleveland, I mean, it's the school that I went to, which is a trip, but like it really is this community. And I know that, I mean, born and raised in Albuquerque for both of us. Were you born in Albuquerque?
Yeah, absolutely.
The town just gets smaller and smaller and smaller, which is kind of fun, right? And then you start to recognize people in every different facet of life that you've been in. I mean, I've worked at a gym in town and a grocery store, and I feel like I recognize all these faces. It's nice that you're able to provide a space for people. And I almost want to say the artist community in town is fairly small. And especially when you're going to school at UNM, I was way more involved than I am now. And I think after doing these interviews, it's made me want to get back out there and to go to those first Friday gallery nights, especially downtown with 516 Arts that's just down there. They've got some cool stuff going on. So it's been nice to kind of reinvigorate my sense. Sometimes I get so caught up in just teaching that it's hard for me to come into this art world because I'm so focused in the art education. But you get to have the best of both worlds. You're making art and teaching it, and hopefully finding some sort of balance. So
yeah, totally. I mean, you got to come down for First Friday because, and when it kicks back off, because there's so many different spots to pop into. We open our doors, and we have a show every month too at the shop here. And all of the in-house artists, we have a new drop either on like a shirt or a poster or some sort of interesting like gallery show with a local artist. And then next door, Ace Barbershop has a gallery show. The gallery upstairs has a show. And we block off 4th Street and bring a DJ out front, and people dance and everything. So whenever we're able to gather again, that's gonna be worth checking out. I mean, in the meantime, we're trying to find ways to do a type of virtual First Friday, and we're doing pitches with the city right now because they have a creative fund for people like us, to where they want to have us create digital content and stuff that still represents culture and arts. So hopefully we can create some cool stuff in the interim that'll bridge the gap, and then come down and check everything out and be involved, because
it's forcing us to think in a different way, which is good. And I get in a groove and I do the same thing over and over, and so it's forcing me to think about some things differently, which isn't bad. And I just hope the shutdown isn't as long as you hear all these different projections, but it would be a nice time for everything to open back up so people can socialize during the nice weather. But so send me any resources or any information you want, and I'll blast it out. That's all I have for right now. If there's anything you want to add, you can.
Are you're showing this to your students? Did you say you wanted them to recreate some art or something like that?
I think what I'm going to do is I'll Well, for Larry Bob, what I did was I put up the video, that the interview that I gave him, and then I connected his website, and then they had to do a sketch of one of his drawings, come up with similarities and differences that they have with Larry Bob, recreate one of his drawings, and then reflect on it. They had to write a postcard to a family member or friend after they had entered into one of his paintings, and
Nice.
then they told them what it was like. And then we're having a reflection on Friday, so we'll see what they thought of the lesson. And then I guess I'll just recreate a new one for next week, and I'll add what I thought was efficient and take away what wasn't, and
Cool. Yeah, I can send you my Instagram,
Oh, perfect.
and I can I can try to make it a little more kid friendly
Eh,
before you send out the link. But
well,
my also the link to my shop store, and if they want, they could design a T-shirt. You know what I mean? Whatever you think. But yeah, if you need any more art or links or anything like that, let me know.
yeah, maybe I can post like a blank t-shirt template, and they could create a t-shirt design. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, totally. I mean, if they did it all one color, we could even print it for them, and then we could send it to them. That would be a cool way to connect, you know.
That would be. I wonder if I could do this, if I could make this work.
We can make it work. I have a template somewhere I could email you, you know.
Okay.
And then it just says design your own T-shirt or something like that.
Yeah, do that.
If they just do it one color, you know, like with a Sharpie, like draw it in pencil first and then go over it with a Sharpie, and then you were to email me them, I could compile them all on one thing, and then we could print it, and then I'll send it. I'll send it to you. You send it to them or something like that.
What
Or you could
file,
come up or-
if they were to make it, what file would you need it back in?
I mean, a JPEG would work. Like they could just take a picture. The
Yeah.
parents could take a picture with the phone, you know,
Yeah.
or they could take a picture with their phone. That would work. Yeah, I can make that work, but they have to remember just one color because
Yeah.
it's harder to do multiple
Yeah.
colors.
Yeah. One color. This could be like our distance learning, distance teaching pandemic t-shirt that we have for school.
I'm over here with the pandemic response for everything.
Cool. Okay. Well, I'm going to think about that more, so I'll definitely contact you. I'll stop the recording.